Hey guys. Okay, so I really missed you last week. This week we are talking about constant rate of change. We are talking about constant of proportionality. We're going to learn whether or not data is proportional. But in order to do that, we've got to make sure that you understand what the coordinate plane is, how to use it, how to graph points, how to use tables. All of that information has got to happen before we can be sure that you know everything else that's going to be going on. So we're going to start with the coordinate plane. So now when talking about the coordinate plane, a very important thing to think about is the fact that there are two values in an ordered pair that you're going to use on the coordinate plane. Okay, so having said that, that also goes with what your axes are. Okay, you have two axes. You have the x-axis and you have the y-axis. Just like in an ordered pair, you have an x value, you have a y value. So that's where we're going to start. So today and tomorrow, we're actually going to be looking at sixth grade information that you didn't get because of all the fun that happened with COVID. So we got to make sure you understand all that information before we can actually move into what we've got to cover. So we are going to start there because this is a very, 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 very important TEK for seventh grade. But it's not going to do you any good if you don't have the TEK from the sixth grade. All right, so talking about the coordinate plane. Like I told you, you have two axes. If I can get my marker open. Okay, you have your x-axis and you have your y-axis. Now, with this, you have two pieces. You have the positive side of the x, so that's all your positive x numbers. You have the positive side of your y, so that's all your y value, your positive y values. You have the negative side of your x, so all of your negative values, and the negative side of your y, so all of your negative y values. All right, now we also have something called quadrants. Now, there are four quadrants, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they actually are counted in that direction. They are counterclockwise. That means they go the opposite direction of a clock. So if you think about a clock, 12, 6, 3, 9. Okay, if you think about a clock, and we have our hour hands and our minute hands, the hands go this way, right? Okay, so they start at the 12 and they go down and then back around. Well, with the coordinate plane, when you're labeling the quadrants, it actually goes the opposite direction of what a clock does. That's why it's called counterclockwise. So here is quadrant 1. Now, a clock would go this way, but we are going counterclockwise. There's a glare. We are going counterclockwise. So this is 1. So this is quadrant 2. This is quadrant 3. And this is quadrant 4. So when you're looking at ordered pairs in these different quadrants, if you look right here, quadrant 1, you're with the x positive and the y positive. So that means, get a different color marker, that means that your x value is going to be positive and your y value is going to be positive. Now, an ordered pair looks like this. So you have an x and you have a y. Okay? So x is always first. Think about the alphabet. X comes before Y. Same thing with an ordered pair. So over here, we have an X that's positive and we have a Y that is positive. Okay. Then in quadrant 2, if you look here, my X is negative. My Y is still positive. So I have a negative X and a positive Y. Now, quadrant 3, if you look here, I'm at a negative X and a negative Y. So my ordered pair will be a negative X and a negative Y. And then if you look at quadrant 4, I'm back to a positive X, but I'm still at a negative Y. So my ordered pair will be a positive X, but a negative Y. Okay, so if you can remember this information, if they give you an ordered pair and they say, what quadrant is this ordered pair found in? If you can remember this information, that'll make it easier. If not, you can always plot the point and then see, okay, where does it end up? All right. So the other thing that you have to understand is sometimes our points are not just going to be in a quadrant. They actually could be on the axis. So you could have a point on the x-axis. You could have a point on the y-axis. But you could also have a point at the origin. And that's something else that you have to understand if you're going to be successful with this unit. So the origin is this point right here where your two axes meet. Okay, this is the origin. And it has a very special ordered pair. Its ordered pair is always 0, 0. Now remember, 0 is neither positive nor negative. So it's not like positive 0, negative 0. It's just 0, 0. That is what it is. Okay. So that point right there where your axes meet is called the origin. And it has an ordered pair of 0, 0. Okay. Now I told you, sometimes you're going to have an ordered pair that's going to put you on one of the axes. So we're going to look at that now. So if we look here, if you have an ordered pair that puts you on the x-axis, remember x is first. So wherever that ordered pair is, that is your x value. So if it's at 1, your x value is 1. If it's at 2, your x value is 2, whatever. So this ordered pair, if it's on the axis, will be a positive x, but your y will be 0. Because if it's sitting on the axis, I didn't move up or down. So that means my y is 0. So if it's on the x-axis, your y is always going to be 0. The only thing you have to decide is my x positive or is my x negative. Because it could be over here. And if it's over here, then you have a negative x, but your y is still 0. These are called your x-intercepts, where it crosses the x-axis. Now, that's a definition that you need to remember. So these are your x-intercepts. That's an INT if you can't see it. An x-intercept is the point that is on the x-axis. Okay? So an x-intercept is the point that is on the x-axis. All right? So now, if an x-intercept is a point on the x-axis, then what do you think a y-intercept is? Exactly. It's the point on the y-axis. So just like with the x-intercepts, you can have points on the y-axis. And they're going to follow the same idea as the x-intercepts, except, remember, x is first, y is second. So now, instead of our number being first and 0 being second, we're going to flip it. Okay, so now 0 will be first, and my positive y will be second if it's up here. Or if it's down here, 0 is still first, and my y negative would be second. And these are your y-intercepts. And this is the point on the y-axis. Okay? So it's the same concept. It's just a different axis. Okay? So that's that. Now, I'm going to do a couple of examples with you. If I can find my eraser. There it is. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to erase this stuff. It looks like I'm going to have to clean it before I erase it again. All right. So now let's actually plot a few points. Then I'm going to go to the actual Google Slides and do your guided practice, okay, with the same kind of information. So if we go ahead and let's draw our coordinate plane. Okay, remember this is x positive, this is y positive, this is x negative, this is y negative, okay? And each of these lines represents 1. Sometimes it'll be different, but in this case today, we're looking at them as being just 1. So this would be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. All right, so now having the numbers there, you should be able to see what I'm talking about these are your positive numbers for your x-axis. These are your positive numbers for your y-axis. Let's get the glare out of the way. These are the negative numbers for your negative values for your x-axis and the negative values for your y. That's where these positives and negatives came from that I was talking to you about. All right, so let's do a couple points. All righty. Let's see here. All right. So point A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So we are going to plot all of these. We're going to talk about them as we do them. And we're going to label them so you know which point is which. So the first thing we're going to do is A, which is at 0, 0. I told you a minute ago, 0, 0 is right here. This is 0, 0. Now remember, this is also called the origin. Okay, you got to remember that because they're going to say if the point is at the origin, you got to know what that means. They're not just going to say at 0, 0 or where they cross. They're going to call it by its actual name, which is the origin. Okay. All right, now B, -2, 5. So this means my x is -2. My y is 5. Okay, so this is what I'm going to show you. So I'm going to go to -2. And then my y is 5. So if you do that, wherever they cross is your actual ordered pair. So this is B. Okay, so you follow your X first, and then you find your Y. Now, this is in quadrant 2. Remember, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now look at C. So my X is -3, and my Y is -1. If you have trouble remembering that, then just label it. So this is my X, this is my Y. Okay, this is across, this is up and down. However you have to do it so you remember, I don't care. I want you to remember it. That's the important piece. Okay. All right, so my X is -3, so I'm right here. And my Y is -1, which is right here. So that means that C is actually right there where I had that -3. All right, now let's go on to D. 5, 4. So X is 5, Y is 4. So over here's my 5. So I'm going to draw just a dotted line. You don't have to do this every time. This is just a way I'm showing you. I don't normally do this. I normally just count over, up, and then down, whichever way I have to go. And then my Y is 4. So here's my 4. So where they cross is my actual ordered pair, which in this case is letter D. So I'm going to label it letter D. Now E is +2 for the X and a -5 for the Y. So here's my 2 and here's my -5. So right there is my E. Now the last two I did on purpose because these are the ones that get people every single time. So my X is -3 and my Y is 0. These are the easy ones. That means all I have to do is find -3 on the X-axis, and that's it. My Y is 0. I don't go up or down. I stay put on the axis. So over here is -3. Remember, we actually made a mark through it. So right here, it's on the axis. The only time it will be plotted on the axis is if your Y is 0. So that's F. Now the next one, I flipped it. I don't go left or right on the X because X is 0. I'm only going to go up or down. So it's going to be on the Y axis. So I'm going to Y is 5, which is right here. So there's your G. Now, if I ask you, okay, great. Now let's talk about where all of these are located. We already talked about the first one. Remember 0, 0, that is the origin. I made mention of it when I plotted B where it was. So remember, and if you have to label it, then label it. It's not going to take you 2 seconds. So quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. Okay, so now we already know that A is at the origin. B is -2, 5. Right here's B. Where is it? It's in quadrant 2. All right, C is -3, -1. Well, right here's C. What quadrant is it in? Oh, it's in 3. Okay, D, 5, 4. D is right here. What quadrant is that? Oh, that's quadrant 1. Now, E, 2, -5. Well, right here's E. This is why we label it. What quadrant is it in? Oh, it's in 4. All right, now the tricky ones. F, it's right here. Well, it's kind of with 2 and it's kind of with 3, right? Well, they can't be kind of in 2. It has one answer. If it's not fully in quadrant 2, then it ain't in quadrant 2. If it's not fully in quadrant 3, it's not quadrant 3. It is on the X axis. Remember, it's an X intercept. So the is the x-axis. So you would write x-axis. All right, so now if I look at G, G is not fully in 1 or 2, so it can't be in either one of those. It's on the axis, the y-axis. So that is your answer, y-axis. Okay? Now, one other thing that I want to look at is that sometimes these points can be given to you in a table. We're going to look more at tables tomorrow, but we do have a few, so I just want to make mention of it. If you look at a table, and we'll draw it over here, it could look like this. Okay, or it could look like this. Okay, so if you're looking at this, the left is always your X, the right is always your Y. If you're looking at a horizontal chart, X is always on top, Y is always on bottom. First, second, first, second, first, second. It all flows together. Okay? Now, when you're looking at a table, your X values are also called your input. And your Y values are your output. So if somebody says, hey, what's your input values? Those are your X values. If they say, hey, what are your output values? Those are your Y values. Okay? All right. So now you need to go to the slides for Monday and follow me with the guided practice. And I'll take you through some examples, and then you'll need to finish those slides and take your MOL. Tomorrow, we're going to look more at tables. And then on Wednesday, we're going to start talking about what is constant rate of change, what is proportionality, how do we know if something's proportional or not. We will continue talking about that on Thursday. And then Friday, you will have your weekly MOL, and it will cover graphing and proportionality. All right? All right, so go to your slides, do your guided practice for today, and then I'll see you back here tomorrow. We're almost on the home stretch, almost to Christmas break. Bye, guys.
My hair kind of got in.
That's okay. Go get me a Lysol